This is a total waste of time, he burst out. Unable to contain his frustration, he leaned forward, as if trying to will the car to move faster by sheer force of desire. I have a vital meeting to attend. Can't you drive faster? His tone was harsh now, each word clipped with irritation. Mr. Peter's hands stayed steady on the steering wheel. He did not turn around, did not snap back. The only reaction was a brief sigh, so quiet Mr. Kennedy almost didn't hear it. The afternoon sun beat down on Abuja, Nigeria's capital city, casting short shadows on the wide streets. It was just past noon, and the air shimmered with dry heat as cars glided along the road in front of a prominent hotel in the Maitama district. Inside the hotel lobby, Mr. Kennedy, a wealthy businessman, hurriedly gathered his things for an important meeting scheduled for 1 p.m. He was a tall man in his late 40s, dressed simply in a neat shirt and trousers. Despite his simple attire, everything about him spoke of success, from his polished leather shoes to the gold wristwatch glinting on his wrist. Today, however, that confident shine in his eyes was mixed with anxiety. Mr. Kennedy had built his fortune through property development and luxury real estate. He was used to be in control of his time, of his businesses, of every situation. That afternoon in Abuja, he believed nothing would be different. By 12 p.m., he was already downstairs, prepared to leave for his meeting across town. He even planned a quick stop at the T.M. Lewin store in Jabi Lake Mall on the way to pick up a few suits and shoes so he could look his best. His strategy was tight but feasible. Leave by noon, reach the mall by 12:30, grab the suit, and get to the meeting venue by 1 p.m. Every minute counted. However, life had other plans. As Mr. Kennedy stepped out of the hotel's air-conditioned lobby into the bright afternoon, he squinted at the blinding sunlight. The heat was intense, wrapping around him like a heavy blanket. He walked briskly to the parking area where a sleek black sedan awaited, his assigned car for the trip. The driver had taken the day off, but Mr. Kennedy was confident he could drive himself. With a click of the remote, he unlocked the car and settled into the driver's seat. He inserted the key into the ignition and turned it. Nothing happened. Frowning, he tried again, only to be met with silence. A sinking feeling grew in his stomach. He noticed that the interior lights were dim. The car battery was completely dead. Mr. Kennedy's heart skipped a beat. This can't be happening, he thought. Not now. Panic set in as he glanced at his wristwatch. It was 12:03 p.m. The second hand of his luxury watch seemed to tick mockingly fast. Each passing second was bringing him closer to missing that vital meeting. No, 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 he muttered, popping the hood of the car and stepping out to see if he could spot the problem. A wave of hot air struck him as he left the shade of the car. He quickly touched the battery terminals. They were secure but clearly drained. Perhaps the driver had left a light on overnight, or the battery was old. Whatever the cause, the result was the same. The car wasn't going anywhere. Mr. Kennedy wiped beads of sweat from his forehead. He felt a red sense of helplessness. As a businessman, he was used to solving problems with a phone call or a credit card. But this situation left him stranded, at least for the moment. To make matters worse, he realized he had left his phone charging upstairs in his hotel room. The thought of going up to retrieve and call for help would eat up more precious minutes. Besides, even if he called the mechanic or the hotel staff to jumpstart the car, it could take too long. He needed to leave immediately. His eyes scanned the street beyond the hotel gate. Normally, he had a chauffeur or a prearranged car for important trips, but there was no time to arrange that now. Through the shimmering heat, he saw a few yellow painted taxis passing by. There was no other choice. He would have to take a local taxi. It had been ages since Mr. Kennedy last took a regular taxi. His wealth usually afforded him private transportation, but desperation overruled pride. He grabbed his briefcase, adjusted his simple outfit, and started toward the hotel entrance, moving quickly. Outside, the sounds of the city assaulted him. Distant car horns, the hum of traffic, and the murmur of pedestrians going about their way. The security guard at the gate gave Mr. Kennedy a curious look. It was uncommon to see a guest of his stature rushing out looking flustered. Mr. Kennedy normally exuded calm and control, but right now his urgency showed. He raised a hand toward the road, trying to hail a taxi. A couple of taxi drivers noticed the well-dressed man and slowed down. The first taxi to approach was already carrying some passengers, a common sight in Abuja, where some taxis operate on a shared basis, locally called an along service, picking up multiple fares heading the same general direction. Mr. Kennedy didn't mind if it wasn't a private ride, he just needed to get moving. He flagged the taxi down. It was an old Toyota sedan with peeling yellow paint and a cracked side mirror. The vehicle had definitely seen better days. As the taxi pulled over, Mr. Kennedy quickly peered inside. There were two other passengers squeezed in, a young woman who looked like a student in the back seat and an older man in the front passenger seat. The back seat had room for one more person. Normally, Mr. Kennedy might have grimaced at the idea of sharing a small car with strangers, but today he could not afford to be picky. He opened the rear door and slipped in beside the young woman. The seat was worn and the faint smell of dust and petrol hung in the air, but he ignored these details and focused on his watch again. "Please, I need to get to Jabi Lake Mall quickly," Mr. Kennedy told the driver as soon as he settled, his voice tight with urgency. The driver, a middle-aged man with gentle eyes and a short beard, turned slightly and gave a small nod. "Yes, sir," he replied calmly. The taxi eased back into traffic. Mr. Kennedy noticed the driver checking his mirrors and merging carefully rather than darting out. To Mr. Kennedy, it felt agonizingly slow. He bit his lip, trying to stay calm. The time was now about 12:10 p.m. The drive to Jabi on a good day would take around 20 minutes. They moved quickly. He could still make it to the mall by around 12:30, grab what he needed in maybe 10 minutes, and then rush to the meeting venue by 1 p.m. or shortly after. It would be tight, but possibly if the driver hurried. At first, the taxi moved through Maitama's orderly streets at a moderate pace. The young woman next to Mr. Kennedy got off just a couple of blocks later, apparently reaching her destination at a nearby office building. That left only two passengers, Mr. Kennedy in the back seat and the older man in the front. After collecting the fare from the woman, the driver resumed the journey. Instead of speeding up, however, he continued at the same unhurried pace. Mr. Kennedy's anxiety mounted. Every traffic light that turned red felt like a personal affront. He found himself tapping his foot and clenching his fist unconsciously each time the taxi slowed down. Meanwhile, the other remaining passenger, the man in front, didn't seem bothered at all. In fact, a few minutes later, that man cheerfully announced his stop was coming up. The taxi driver pulled over to let him out, exchanging a friendly word as the man paid and left. Now, it was just Mr. Kennedy and the taxi driver in the car. It should have been a relief, with no other passengers. One would expect a direct ride to Mr. Kennedy's destination. But to Mr. Kennedy's dismay, the driver still drove at the same steady, careful speed, as if they had all the time in the world. Inside the taxi, the air was warm and still. The car's old air conditioner struggled to put out cool air. Mr. Kennedy loosened his collar, feeling sweat prickling at his neck. He leaned forward, attempting to catch the driver's eye in the rearview mirror. "Sir, can you please go a bit faster?" he said, trying to sound polite but unable to keep the tension out of his voice. The driver, whose name, according to a faded ID card on the dashboard, was Mr. Peter, glanced in the mirror and gave a polite half smile. "Traffic is a bit light today. We will get there, sir," he replied softly, then returned his focus to the road. However, getting there at this pace was not enough for Mr. Kennedy. As the taxi rolled past the elegant tree-lined boulevard of Abuja's central area, he could see other cars overtaking them. A sleek black SUV whizzed by, followed by a couple of green and white painted Abuja taxis carrying other passengers. It frustrated him that Mr. Peter wasn't matching the speed of those other drivers. Minutes ticked by. They passed the National Mosque with its golden dome in the distance and headed toward the highway that would lead to Jabi. Mr. Kennedy checked his watch again. 12:25 p.m. His heart pounded faster than the car's engine. At this rate, they might not reach the mall until close to 12:45. 15 minutes to get a suit and make 1 p.m. meeting. It seemed impossible. A surge of impatience and panic finally boiled over inside him. He raised his voice without even realizing it. "Do you even know where you are going?" he snapped at the driver. There was a sharp edge to his words, born of stress and fear of being late. Mr. Peter's eyes flickered up to the rearview mirror again. His expression remained calm, almost stoic. "Yes, sir. Jabi Lake Mall. I know the place, sir," he answered quietly. He did not sound offended, only factual. But Mr. Kennedy was in no mood to appreciate the driver's calmness. To him, that calm felt like indifference to his urgent situation. As they got onto a stretch of road free of traffic, Mr. Kennedy expected the driver to accelerate. Instead, Mr. Peter maintained a steady speed, obeying the city's speed limit and slowing slightly for the occasional pothole. It was more than Mr. Kennedy could bear. He felt every muscle in his body tensing. "This is a total waste of time," he burst out. Unable to contain his frustration, he leaned forward, as if trying to will the car to move faster by sheer force of desire. "I have a vital meeting to attend. Can't you drive faster?" His tone was harsh now, each word clipped with irritation. Mr. Peter's hands stayed steady on the steering wheel. He did not turn around, did not snap back. The only reaction was a brief sigh, so quiet Mr. Kennedy almost didn't hear it. The driver's knuckles gripped the wheel, but he kept his voice level and respectful. "I understand, sir," he said softly. "I will do my best." With that gentle response, he pressed slightly more on the accelerator. The taxi gained a bit of speed, but not as much as Mr. Kennedy wanted. They overtook a slow truck, but still cruised below what Mr. Kennedy felt was truly fast. It wasn't enough. Mr. Kennedy felt an anger he rarely showed to strangers rising up. Perhaps it was the stress of the day's schedule unraveling, or maybe it was the unfamiliar helplessness of being dependent on someone else's driving. He had planned everything so meticulously, yet here he was, at the mercy of a taxi driver's choices. Why did my car have to fail today of all days? He thought bitterly, but in his frustration found a target in Mr. Peter. Over the next few minutes, complaint after complaint tumbled out of Mr. Kennedy's mouth. He criticized the route. We should have taken the expressway. It is faster. Even if in reality, Mr. Peter was on the main road to Jabi, he complained about the taxi's condition. If your car was in better shape, maybe you wouldn't have to slow down so much. Unfairly blaming the vehicle for every bump. He even questioned the driver's competence outright. Have you ever even driven anyone to a timed appointment? You are going to make me late, man. Each sharp remark hung in the air of the small car. With each outburst, Mr. Kennedy's voice rose higher. His words came out cutting and impatient. He was a man used to commanding boardrooms and negotiating deals, and now that commanding tone was directed at the humble taxi driver. One could almost imagine the stress and anger pouring out of Mr. Kennedy like stream. Yet, throughout all of it, Mr. Peter remained calm. He did not respond defensively to the insults. He did not raise his voice in return. In fact, he mostly stayed quiet, letting Mr. Kennedy's complaints wash over him like waves against a rock. Occasionally, Mr. Peter would murmur an apology. "I'm sorry, sir," in a tone so mild it barely registered over Mr. Kennedy's tirade. There was a dignified patience in the driver's demeanor, as if he understood that the anger wasn't truly personal, but born from the passenger's own worries. Inside the car, silence finally fell after Mr. Kennedy ran out of fresh ways to complain. He sank back against the seat, breathing hard as if he had run on a race, his heart thumping. He stared out the window at the Abuja cityscape racing by, though to him, it still felt too slow. They were getting closer to Jabi now. The signs of Jabi Lake Mall and the surrounding district began to appear. It was around 12:40 p.m. by his watch. He was very late for his planned suit pickup and dangerously close to missing the 1 p.m. meeting altogether. As the minutes passed in tense quiet, Mr. Kennedy's eyes drifted around the taxi's interior. That's when something caught his attention. A small worn-out photograph hanging from the rearview mirror. It dangled from a piece of frayed string, swaying gently with the car's motion. The photo was protected by a thin plastic wrap, now yellowed at the edges from age. In it, he could make out two young children wearing school uniforms. They looked around 6 or 7 years old, one missing a front tooth, both grinning wide with innocent joy. The photo was a bit faded, but the happiness on those students' faces was clear as a day. Mr. Kennedy found himself staring at the picture. His stream of complaint trailed off into silence as he became absorbed in the image of those children. He realized they must be Mr. Peter's children. Perhaps the very reason the man was working as a taxi driver, likely struggling to make ends meet. The children in the photo were adorable, their smiles gap-toothed and genuine, the kind of smile only kids who haven't yet faced the hardships of life can wear. They were dressed in neat school uniforms, white shirts, blue shorts for the boy, and a blue pinafore for the girl. On their feet were simple black school shoes, a bit dusty, possibly hand-me-downs. Mr. Kennedy noticed that although the photo was old and worn, it had been handled with care, lovingly wrapped to protect it from damage, as if it were a precious treasure. In that suspended moment, Mr. Kennedy's perspective began to shift. His angry thoughts about the slow taxi and the fear of missing his meeting were momentarily replaced by curiosity and an unexpected feeling of empathy. His eyes moved from the children's smiling faces in the photo to the man behind the wheel. Mr. Peter's face was visible in the mirror, focused, calm, lined with a few wrinkles that suggested he was indeed in his early 50s, as Mr. Kennedy had guessed. There was a gentle determination in the driver's eyes, a kind of quiet strength that Mr. Kennedy had been too upset to notice before. Suddenly, Mr. Kennedy felt a wave of shame. This driver is not just a taxi driver, he thought to himself. He's a father who probably wakes up at dawn to drive strangers around the city's hot and hectic streets, all to earn enough to take care of those two little children smiling in the photo. Perhaps he has to pay their school fees, buy their books, put food on the table, all on a taxi driver's meager earnings. Abuja is an expensive city and taxi fares are not very high for local riders. The thought humbled Mr. Kennedy. Here he was, a millionaire businessman, with all the comfort in the world, berating a man who likely made in a day what Mr. Kennedy might spend on a single lunch or a tank of fuel for his luxury car. Each complaint Mr. Kennedy had heard now echoed back in his mind, sounding different, petty and cruel. "This is a waste of my time," he had shouted. But whose time was really being wasted? Was his time inherently more valuable than the driver's? Mr. Peter was spending these same minutes earning a living, possibly trying to stay safe on the road for the sake of his family. "Can't you drive faster?" he had demanded. Yet Mr. Peter drove steadily because he had learned the dangers of reckless driving. Perhaps he valued safety. After all, he had precious children waiting for him to come home each day. There could be so many reasons. Maybe his car had aging brakes that he was cautious about, or he knew that traffic enforcement in Abuja was strict and he couldn't risk a speeding violation since he needed his taxi job. Mr. Kennedy realized he hadn't considered any of this. He had only seen the situation through the lens of his own urgency. The car rolled to a stop at another traffic light. Mr. Kennedy cleared his throat. "Those your children?" he asked quietly, gesturing toward the photo. It was the first time he had spoken without anger. His voice had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a softer tone. Mr. Peter glanced up at the picture, and a small smile touched the corners of his lips. "Yes, sir," he replied with a gentle pride. "My son and my daughter." "They have lovely smiles," Mr. Kennedy added, managing a faint, genuine smile of his own. He imagined Mr. Peter's children's excitement when their father comes home each day. Perhaps they run to the door to greet him. Maybe the little boy asks, "Daddy, what did you bring?" Or shows him what he learned at school, while the girl might jump up in his arms. The image warmed and pained Mr. Kennedy at the same time. It warmed him to see evidence of love and family in the middle of this stressful day, and pained him because it highlighted how harshly he had treated the man who had those kids waiting for him. Mr. Peter's eyes brightened a bit at the mention of his children. "Thank you, sir," he said. "They are good kids, very smart, and a handful too," he added with a soft chuckle. He obviously loved talking about them, but he kept it brief, possibly sensing that his passenger might not want to hear a long personal story. Yet, that one glimpse into the driver's personal life was enough to firmly pierce the bundle of frustration that Mr. Kennedy had been living in for the last half hour. For the first time since he got into the taxi, Mr. Kennedy sat back and took a deep breath that wasn't felt by anger. The traffic light turned green and the taxi moved on. Now, an uncomfortable silence filled the air, uncomfortable at least for Mr. Kennedy. He felt embarrassed by his earlier behavior. He realized he had been shouting at a man who had shown him nothing but calm and professional behavior. A man who was just trying to do his job. Shame washed over him in waves. The contrast between his wealth and the driver's modest life weighed on him. Mr. Kennedy recalled something his own mother used to tell him when he was young. Be kind to everyone because you never know what they are going through. How easily he had forgotten that lesson in his rush and panic. As they approached the mall area, Mr. Kennedy decided to let go of the remaining irritation. After all, despite the slower pace, Mr. Peter was still getting him to the destination. He's helping me, Mr. Kennedy thought, and I have been so unkind in return. The least he could do now was be respectful and hope he could still salvage the day. When the taxi finally pulled up near Jabi Lake Mall, it was around 12:50 p.m. The mall's modern facade rose up with large glass windows reflecting the bright sky. Mr. Kennedy could see the sign for TM Lewin on the outside of the mall, the store he intended to visit for his suit. He knew with sinking certainty that there was no way he could go in, shop, and then get to his meeting by 1 p.m. In fact, he was likely already late or would be by the time he reached the meeting venue. He resigned himself to that reality. The meeting was probably a lost cause now. He would have to apologize later and hope for a chance to reschedule. But another immediate issue pushed aside even the thought of the missed meeting: paying the taxi fare. As Mr. Peter brought the car to a gentle stop by the curb, Mr. Kennedy reached into his pocket to retrieve his wallet. In his rush, he hadn't checked for it earlier. He had assumed it was with him, as usual. He felt nothing in his trouser pocket except for a pen. Frowning, he tried the pockets of his light-weighted jacket. Still nothing. A slight panic started to rise. He patted down all pockets. No wallet. Quickly, he checked his briefcase, though he never kept his wallet there. As expected, it wasn't inside. Cold realization struck him. He had left his wallet back at the hotel, likely in the room or perhaps in the car that had broken down. And not just his wallet, his phone and credit cards were also in that same wallet or next to it. Mr. Kennedy's mouth went dry. How could he have been so careless? In the case of the car not starting and rushing to find a taxi, he hadn't grabbed his phone or wallet from the console of his car. He closed his eyes for a second, mentally kicking himself. This meant he had no money on him right now to pay the driver for the ride, let alone to buy the suit he came for or even to hire another taxi onward. The timing couldn't be worse. He had finally calmed down and seen the driver in a sympathetic light, and now he was about to reveal that he couldn't pay the man for his service. Embarrassment and anxiety washed over Mr. Kennedy in equal measure. He, a man of considerable wealth, was effectively stranded without cash in that moment. It was an odd, humbling predicament. He slowly lifted his gaze to meet Mr. Peters via the rearview mirror. The driver had turned off the engine and was waiting, perhaps expecting Mr. Kennedy to hand over the fare or step out. Mr. Kennedy's mind raced as he tried to think of what to do. Could he ask the driver to wait while he ran inside the mall to see if he could withdraw money somehow? No, that wouldn't work without his cards or phone. Maybe he could borrow a phone from someone to call the hotel, ask them to send his belongings with a staff member. That would take too long, and this driver had other work to do. He realized with dread that the simplest course was to tell the truth and face the consequences. He had to tell Mr. Peter that he had no money to pay right now. The very thought made his cheeks burn with shame. This kind of situation was entirely new to him. In all his years of doing business, traveling the world, and dealing with people from all walks of life, he had never found himself unable to pay for something when required. Money was usually his easiest tool, a solution to most problems. But at this instant, all his bank accounts and credit lines meant nothing. He didn't have physical cash or cards on him. He was effectively penniless on the roadside. Mr. Peter glanced back, noticing that Mr. Kennedy hadn't exited the car yet. The driver's eyebrows knitted together with slight concern. Perhaps he sensed something was off. In a gentle voice, he asked, "Sir, is everything okay?" This simple, polite question, especially spoken in that kind of tone, made Mr. Kennedy feel even smaller. He opened his mouth, but at first no sound came out. He was tongue-tied, struggling to form the words of an explanation. After a long pause, Mr. Kennedy managed to speak, his voice low and strained. I I have a problem." Mr. Peter turned fully in his seat now to look at his passenger. Mr. Kennedy continued hauntingly, avoiding eye contact. "I'm really, really sorry, but I just realized I left my wallet and phone back at the hotel. I have nothing to pay you with right now." The confession hung in the air. Mr. Kennedy felt his face grow hot. He couldn't believe he was in this scenario, apologizing to a taxi driver for being unable to pay a fare that was, in truth, a trivial amount for him under normal circumstances. It was as if all the status and pride he carried had been stripped away in an instant. He braced himself for the driver's reaction. He had half expected Mr. Peter to frown in anger or express frustration, maybe even raise his voice after all the rudeness he endured earlier. He deserved it, Mr. Kennedy thought bitterly. If the roles were reversed, would he not feel upset that someone was unable to pay after taking a service? For a moment, Mr. Peter was silent. He looked at Mr. Kennedy, then at the empty space where the wallet should have been, perhaps processing the situation. There was a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but not the kind of annoyance Mr. Kennedy anticipated. Instead, Mr. Peter's expression softened further with understanding. "Ah, I see," he said quietly. He glanced at his watch and then out the window as if considering something. Mr. Kennedy hurriedly added, "I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did this." He was truly apologetic. All the impatience and anger from earlier had evaporated. Now he just felt like a foolish man who had been taught a lesson in humility by circumstances. "I could maybe have you drive me back to the hotel," Mr. Kennedy offered, though he knew it was unfair to ask. "I have money there and I will pay you double for the extra trouble." At this point, Mr. Peter shook his head and held up his hand gently. "Sir, please," he interjected in a calm voice. "It's all right, there is no need." Mr. Kennedy looked at him in confusion. No need? Did he mean no need to pay at all? Mr. Kennedy's conscience pricked him. He didn't want to effectively steal a ride, especially not from someone likely earning far less in a day than Mr. Kennedy usually spent on a single dinner. "No, I will pay you. I'm really sorry about this," he insisted, flustered. "Maybe you can give me your number or something, and I will send someone with the money or transfer it to you later today. I promise." But Mr. Peter simply smiled kindly and shook his head again. "Sir, please don't worry about it," he said, his voice as soothing as if he were talking to a family member. "I understand these things happen." He genuinely sounded as if this was not a big problem. This response only made Mr. Kennedy feel more ashamed for how he had treated the man earlier. Here he was, expecting at least some irritation, and instead, he was met with grace. Mr. Peter continued, speaking slowly and choosing his words thoughtfully. "I would have driven you back to your hotel to retrieve your wallet, but I'm actually already running late to pick up another passenger." He pointed to the old digital clock on his dashboard. It read 12:55 p.m. Mr. Peter had an obligation, likely someone who had booked him or was waiting for a ride, and he didn't want to delay them either. Mr. Kennedy felt a wave of gratitude mixed with guilt. "You have been very kind," he murmured, feeling the weight of each word. He truly meant it. After all the rude remarks Mr. Peter endured, He still responded with patience and understanding. Mr. Kennedy realized that Mr. Peter had remained professional and courteous the whole time, showing remarkable restraint and empathy. Many other drivers might have snapped back or even kicked a troublesome passenger out of the car, but not Mr. Peter. He was about to reiterate his promise to pay later when Mr. Peter did something that left Mr. Kennedy completely stunned. The driver reached into the pocket of his faded brown trousers and pulled out a slim worn wallet of his own. Mr. Kennedy watched, perplexed, as Mr. Peter opened his wallet and took out a 1,000 naira note. The bill was a bit creased from being in the wallet, and Mr. Peter straightened it with his fingers. Turning around in his seat to face Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Peter extended the money toward him. "Here," he said softly. "Take this. It should be enough for you to get a taxi back to your hotel later or whenever you need to go." For a moment, Mr. Kennedy was sure he had misheard. His eyes widened, staring at the blue-colored 1,000 naira note in the driver's hand. That amount was modest, roughly the typical fare for a short taxi ride in the city, perhaps a bit more. But what really shocked Mr. Kennedy was the realization that this driver, whom he had treated so poorly, was offering him money out of his own pocket. It was unthinkable to him. He felt his throat tighten with emotion and words utterly failed him. He lifted his hands, shaking his head vigorously. I can't accept this," he managed to stammer. The idea of taking money from Mr. Peter was unbearable. Mr. Peter likely needed that cash for fuel, or for his family's dinner, or some other necessity. Yet, Mr. Peter was pressing it into his hand insistently. When Mr. Kennedy didn't immediately take it, Mr. Peter gently reached through the partition and almost tucked it into Mr. Kennedy's palm. "Please, sir," Mr. Peter said, looking at Mr. Kennedy with sincere eyes. "Don't worry about the fare, and use this to help you get back safely. I know how it feels to be stuck without any money or phone. I can't leave you like that." Mr. Kennedy felt a lump in his throat. This was too much kindness, more than he ever imagined encountering today, especially from someone he had been so rude to. He tried one more time to protest. "Mr. Peter, I shouted at you. I was so impatient. And now you are being so good to me. I don't know what to say." He could feel an unexpected wetness gathering in his eyes. He blinked rapidly, astonished that he was on the verge of tears. It was not sadness, but overwhelming mix of gratitude and self-reproach causing the emotion. Mr. Peter simply gave a modest shrug. "Sir, everyone has hard days," he said kindly. "I could tell you we are under pressure. It's okay." He spoke as though he were the one comforting him rather than the other way round. What kind of man is this? Mr. Kennedy thought. He was humbled to his core by Mr. Peter's graciousness. In all his life dealing with wealthy clients, shrewd investors, and tough negotiators, he had rarely encountered such pure kindness and empathy. And here it was, embodied in an ordinary taxi driver on the streets of Abuja. Before Mr. Kennedy could say anything more, Mr. Peter gently motioned for him to step out so he could continue with his day. "I truly hope your meeting goes well if you are still going," he said. Then with a tiny encouraging smile he added, "Sometimes we miss things we planned, but maybe it's for a good reason." There was a hint of wisdom in those words that Mr. Kennedy would only fully grasp later. With that, and a final polite nod, Mr. Peter turned back in his seat, restarted the taxi's engine, and with a rumble pulled away from the curb. Mr. Kennedy stepped out of the car in a daze, the 1,000 naira note clutched in his hand. He stood there on the sidewalk outside Jabi Lake Mall, watching the battered yellow taxi merge into traffic and disappear down the road. The city noise swirled around him, but for a moment, he had none of it. All he could think about was what just happened. He had expected to feel anger at this point, anger at missing his meeting, anger at his car failing him, anger at anything. But instead, he felt something entirely different welling up inside, a profound sense of humility and awe. In the span of less than an hour, he had been rushed, frustrated, and angry, then silenced by a glimpse of someone else's life, and ultimately shown incredible kindness by that very person he had mistreated. Slowly, Mr. Kennedy became aware of his surroundings again. The chatter of shoppers going in and out of the mall, the raving car engines in the parking lot, and the relentless sun above. He looked at the 1,000 naira note in his hand. The bill was slightly worn, and he realized it might have been a significant part of Mr. Peter's expected earnings for the day. It was likely more than what the taxi fare had been. Perhaps the fare on the meter, if the taxi had one, might have been around 700 to 800 naira for that distance. Mr. Peter not only waived that but also gave extra. That realization made Mr. Kennedy's chest ache with gratitude and a touch of shame. He carefully folded the note and placed it in his shirt pocket, a temporary holding place until he could repay it. But something in him felt that this note was special. It was no longer just currency. It was a symbol of an act of goodness he would never forget. I will make this right, he promised himself silently. I'll repay him and thank him properly. Mr. Kennedy glanced at his wristwatch one more time. It was a couple minutes past 1 p.m. The meeting had certainly started without him, and his absence was likely noted. Under normal circumstances, missing such an important meeting would have been a source of panic and dread for him. Surprisingly, though, as he stood there now, Mr. Kennedy felt a strange sense of calm. The weight of the missed meeting seemed to pale in comparison to what he had just experienced. He felt changed. The lesson he had just received from Mr. Peter about patience, humility, and generosity overshadowed the business concerns that had consumed him all morning. Decided what to do next, Mr. Kennedy realized going into the mall for a seat was pointless now. Instead, he walked over to a bench under a shade tree near the mall's entrance and sat down. He needed a moment to collect his thoughts. The shade was a relief from the blazing sun, and a slight breeze from the direction of Derby Lake cooled the sweat on his brow. He closed his eyes and replayed the entire episode in his mind. The dead car battery, the frantic rush to catch a taxi, his yelling and Mr. Peter's silence, the photograph of the children, the forgotten wallet, and finally, that incredible gesture of the 1,000 naira note pressed into his hand. It felt almost like a story from a book or a movie. Yet, it had happened to him, Mr. Kennedy, just an ordinary Wednesday in Abuja that turned extraordinary. He thought about how close he had been to letting anger and ego completely dominate him today. If he hadn't noticed that photo, would he have still learned this lesson? Would he have just stomped off angrily at the mall, leaving a bad impression and perhaps never knowing the true character of the man who drove him? Life has interesting ways of teaching us, he mused. Sometimes, in the midst of chaos, a small detail, like a photo of smiling children, can shift our perspective entirely. After resting a few minutes, Mr. Kennedy knew he needed to get back to his hotel and retrieve his wallet and phone. He felt a bit lost without his phone. He couldn't even call his office or the people at the meeting to explain. Perhaps they had tried reaching him and got no answer. Standing up, he flagged another taxi, this time making sure it was a direct hire for himself. A different driver pulled up and Mr. Kennedy negotiated the fare to his hotel at about 600 naira. Ironically, he handed over the same 1,000 naira note Mr. Peter had given, asking the new driver to keep the change once he got him to the hotel. In his mind, he thought, this money is going right back to helping me as it was intended. On the ride back, Mr. Kennedy was quiet and introspective. The new taxi driver tried to make small talk about the weather and traffic, but Mr. Kennedy responded politely and briefly Too absorbed in his own thoughts, he realized he had completely missed the meeting by now, and strangely, he did not mind as much as he would have expected. There would be a fallout perhaps. He might have to apologize formally or maybe even lose the business opportunity. But the impact of what he learned that day felt more significant to his life in the long run. When he finally returned to the hotel, he retrieved his wallet and phone from the car. The battery had since been jump-started by a hotel maintenance worker, he later learned. He immediately called his secretary and asked her to contact the people at the meeting to convey his apologies and request a reschedule or send any urgent documents via email. After that, he went up to his room, sank into a chair, still marveling at how the day had unfolded. That night, Mr. Kennedy lay in bed, replaying the day's event over and over. He realized that in his life of luxury and business, he had become somewhat insulated from the daily struggles and simple acts of kindness that everyday people share. He thought about how a man with so little, Mr. Peter, likely lived a modest life, perhaps even struggling with bills, was willing to be kind and forgiving to someone who had more than enough. It was a humbling thought. Mr. Kennedy promised himself that he would never forget this lesson. True wealth, he now understood, was not about money or assets. It was in character, in compassion, in how one treats others. In the days that followed, Mr. Kennedy found his mind drifting often to the taxi ride and Mr. Peter. He shared the story with a few close friends and family members, not to boast about what he planned to do, but because he was so moved that he had to speak about it. Each time he recounted detail, how he had yelled at the driver and how the driver had responded with patience and an act of kindness. He found himself getting emotional. His friends were amazed. Some were silent, taking in the moral of the story, while others expressed disbelief that a stranger would be that generous, especially after being treated harshly. Mr. Kennedy's wife told him softly, "It sounds like you met an angel in disguise." In some ways, Mr. Kennedy agreed. Mr. Peter's demeanor and kindness did feel almost angelic. For 2 weeks, the incident stayed vivid in Mr. Kennedy's mind. In quiet moments, he would picture Mr. Peter's old taxi rattling along, the one photo of the kids, and that calm voice saying, "It's all right, sir." He knew he wouldn't let this go as just another anecdote. He felt a responsibility now, a responsibility to repay kindness with kindness, and perhaps to pay it forward. He also wanted to make amends for how he acted, even though Mr. Peter seemingly bore no grudge. Mr. Kennedy thought about what he could do for Mr. Peter that would truly make a difference. Simply finding him and paying the fare, even with interest, felt too small. And of course, he could do that regardless. He remembered the state of Mr. Peter's taxi. It was old and a bit run down. Mr. Peter had dreams or needs. Perhaps he wished for a better car to increase his earnings. Maybe he struggled to pay school fees for his children. 1,000 naira was a generous gift from him, but 1,000 naira from Mr. Kennedy to Mr. Peter would be nothing extraordinary. Mr. Peter realized he was in a unique position to really change this man's life for the better if he chose to. After much thought, Mr. Peter made a plan. On his next business trip to Abuja, which was coming up soon, he would set aside time specifically to find Mr. Peter. But he wouldn't go empty-handed. He decided that he would do two things. First, provide Mr. Peter with a brand new vehicle, one that was reliable and comfortable, to replace that aging taxi. With a new vehicle, Mr. Peter could expand his taxi business, perhaps operate more efficiently, or even start a better transport service. Second, Mr. Kennedy wanted to give a monetary gift that could act as a financial cushion or seed money for Mr. Peter's family. Something significant like 5 million naira, which in Nigeria term is a very large sum that could possibly allow Mr. Peter to rent a better apartment or invest in his children's education, or anyway provide considerable security. Being a man of means, Mr. Kennedy checked his finances and found that he could comfortably do this. After all, 5 million and a minivan were not a huge sacrifice for him considering his fortune. But he knew for Mr. Peter, it would be life-changing. In fact, the more he thought about it, the more he felt this was not just an act of charity. It was repayment of a moral debt. Mr. Peter had taught him and given him something intangible yet immensely valuable that day, a lesson in humility and compassion. Mr. Kennedy wanted to balance the scales in the only way he could, by helping improve Mr. Peter's life. Before heading back to Abuja, Mr. Kennedy made arrangements through a contact to purchase a new minivan suitable for use as a taxi or shuttle. He chose a popular model known for durability, a Toyota van, spacious enough to carry many passengers or extra luggage if needed. It was far superior to the small sedan Mr. Peter had. Mr. Kennedy took care of registration papers and insured it, making sure everything would be legally in Mr. Peter's name. He imagined the look on the man's face and it made him smile in anticipation. He also wrote a personal check for 5 million naira and placed it in a thank you card. Along with it, he wrote a short letter expressing his gratitude and what he had learned from the encounter. He chose simple words, just as the lesson had been delivered to him simply. When the day came for Mr. Kennedy to travel to Abuja again, he had all these items prepared. Upon arriving in the city, he first tended to his pressing business meetings. Ironically, he rescheduled and completed the very meeting he had missed, and it went smoothly. But the highlight of his trip was planned for when he had a free afternoon. That day, he dressed in a casual shirt and trousers, nothing flashy, as he didn't want to attract too much attention, and headed out to search for Mr. Peter. Mr. Kennedy remembered that Mr. Peter had dropped him near Jabi Lake Mall, and he had mentioned being late to pick up another passenger. This made Mr. Kennedy suspect that Mr. Peter either frequented that area or had a regular route. Many taxi drivers in Abuja had certain areas they operate in or stands where they wait for passengers. It was possible Mr. Peter often waited at a taxi park or junction near the mall or in the adjacent district. So Mr. Kennedy decided to start the search around the Jabi area. He went to the same spot where he had alighted 2 weeks before, hoping maybe fate would be kind and he would spot that distinct old yellow taxi or the driver's familiar face. He took with him one of his junior associates, partly for help and partly because carrying the keys and documents of a new van felt momentous and he wanted a witness to this event. They also brought the new minivan along, driven by a hired driver, and parked it discreetly in a lot nearby, ready for the surprise. At the taxi park near Jabi Lake Mall, dozens of taxis and their drivers miled about, waiting for fares. The area was bustling with activity, commuters hopping into shared cabs, calling out their destinations, street vendors selling cold sachets of waters and snacks to drivers waiting under shade, and the general hum of city life. Mr. Kennedy felt a bit out of place in this environment, as he normally wouldn't be walking around a taxi rank, but he was determined. He began asking around, describing Mr. Peter to some of the drivers lounging by their cars. "Excuse me, do you know a driver named Peter? He's around 40, drives an old model yellow taxi, and he has a photo of 2 kids hanging in his car." Mr. Kennedy asked politely. The first 2 drivers he approached shook their heads or said they weren't sure. One suggested checking further down by the roadside where some taxis lined up for the evening rush. Not discouraged, Mr. Peter kept looking. He walked around the vicinity, eyes scanning each taxi and driver he passed. He realized he hadn't gotten a good look at the exterior of Mr. Peter's car that day, but he remembered the driver's face well. It was etched in his memory. After about 20 minutes of searching and asking, a young motorcyclist, one of the Okada riders, who had overheard him inquiry, called out, "Oga, you dey find Peter taxi driver?" "Sir, are you looking for Peter the taxi driver?" Mr. Kennedy turned and nodded. "Yes, yes I am," he said. The motorcyclist pointed towards a small gathering of taxi near a corner of the mall's parking area. "Check that side, in dey carry passengers go airport sometimes." "In motor be old Toyota, yellow colour," the man said in pidgin English. Mr. Kennedy thanked him and hurried in that direction. As he neared the indicated spot, he saw a line of a few taxis slowly moving forward as passengers boarded, and then his heart quickened. There it was, the same old Toyota sedan, its yellow paint unmistakably faded, and through the windshield, he thought he could see something dangling from the rearview mirror. It looked like a photo. It was Mr. Peter's taxi. Mr. Peter himself was standing outside the car at that moment, waving in a couple of new passengers who were heading to the airport from the luggage they carried. He was still doing his job diligently, picking up fares just as on the day they met. Mr. Kennedy felt a surge of excitement and relief at having found him. He walked briskly towards the taxi. Mr. Peter was about to get into the driver's seat when Mr. Kennedy approached from the side. "Mr. Peter," he called out, a wide smile breaking over his face. The driver paused and looked at Mr. Kennedy, momentarily puzzled. Clearly, he didn't recognize Mr. Kennedy immediately in these different contexts and outfits. After all, 2 weeks had passed and he had countless passengers in between. To clarify, Mr. Kennedy added, "It's me, the man from 2 weeks ago who forgot his wallet, the one who was rushing to a meeting." As he said this, he placed a hand on his chest and gave an apologetic little wave. He half expected Mr. Peter to remember and perhaps be cautious or neutral, given how their initial encounter had been. Recognition dawned on Mr. Peter's face. His eyes widened slightly and then a friendly smile appeared. "Ah, yes sir, I remember," he said warmly. He stepped away from the car, surprising the two passengers who had just settled in the back seat. Mr. Peter quickly told him, "Please excuse me for 1 minute." He closed their door and walked a few paces to talk with Mr. Kennedy. The passengers looked curious but remained patient. Mr. Peter immediately began, "Sir, how are you? Did you get everything sorted out that day?" He sounded genuinely concerned, as if he had been wondering what became of him after driving off. Mr. Kennedy was touched. Even after all that, Mr. Peter had perhaps thought about him. "I'm fine, thanks to you," Mr. Kennedy said earnestly. I can't tell you how grateful I am for what you did. I have been meaning to find you. Actually, I came back here mainly to look for you." Mr. Peter looked a bit surprised. "To look for me?" he echoed. Mr. Kennedy nodded. He took a deep breath and then started to express himself. "I owe you an apology firstly," he said. "The way I behaved that day was unacceptable. I was stressed, yes, but that's no excuse for how I spoke to you. You were just doing your job and you did it well. I'm truly, truly sorry, Mr. Peter." Before Mr. Peter could respond, Mr. Kennedy continued, "And I also owe you my thanks. You helped me more than I can explain. You showed me kindness when I least deserved it. I haven't forgotten it. In fact, I think about it every day." His voice was sincere and filled with emotion. This was a man unburdening his heart. Mr. Peter listened quietly, then shook his head gently. "Sir, it's all right. I accepted your apology that same day when you said sorry. You don't need to worry about that anymore," he said. "I knew you were in a difficult spot. I'm just glad you were okay." Saying Mr. Peter so forgiving only reinforced Mr. Kennedy's determination to do what he planned. He smiled and said, "I'm more than okay now, thanks to that lesson you taught me." He then gestured to his associate, who was standing a few steps behind, holding an envelope with the check and letter and a key. "Actually," Mr. Kennedy went on, "I came here because I wanted to give you something, a small way to repay you and help you like you helped me." He motioned towards the parking area where not far off, the shiny new minivan was parked. It was sparkling silver color, a stark contrast to the one taxis around. "You see that van over there?" Mr. Kennedy pointed. Mr. Peter followed his gaze, a bit confused at first. "Yes, I see it," he said. "That van is yours." Mr. Kennedy announced, smiling. "It's a gift for you." Mr. Peter looked at Mr. Kennedy, then back at the van, then back at Mr. Kennedy, as if checking if this was some kind of joke or mistake. His eyes went wide and he held up his hands in surprise. Mine? Ah, sir, I don't understand, he stammered. One of the nearby drivers overheard and stopped what he was doing. Looking over curiously, the two passengers in Mr. Peter's taxi cracked the window open, trying to hear what this conversation was that had halted their trip. Mr. Kennedy nodded firmly. Yes, it's fully yours. I've already taken care of the registration and paperwork in your name, Mr. Peter. This way, you can have a reliable vehicle for your taxi business. No more worrying about an old battery or car troubles slowing you down. He couldn't help but chuckle a little, remembering how, ironically, his car's dead battery was the start of all this. Mr. Peter was utterly astonished. He put a hand on his forehead, and for a moment, he was speechless. Sir, this is too much, he finally uttered. His voice shook slightly with emotion. You don't have to. A new car? Tears began to form at the corners of his eyes, and he blinked, trying to hold them back. One could tell this was a man not used to receiving grand gifts. He was overwhelmed. But Mr. Kennedy wasn't done. He took the envelope from his associate and gently placed it into Mr. Peter's hands. There is also a little something in here for you and your family, he explained. It's a check for 5 million naira. I want you to use it for whatever you need. Your children's school fees, your home, or even to start another business if you wish. It's entirely up to you. At this, Mr. Peter literally gasped. 5 million? He repeated, as if to ensure he heard correctly. His hands trembled as he held the envelope. He probably had never seen a check of that amount in his life. His lips quivered, and now a tear did escape, rolling down his cheek. Immediately, he brushed it away with the back of his hand, perhaps feeling shy to be tearing up in front of colleagues and passengers. The other taxi drivers nearby were now staring in amazement, and a small murmuring crowd was beginning to gather, realizing something incredible was happening. One driver exclaimed softly, Wow, God don't butter Mr. Peter bread today, oh! A pidgin expression meaning God has blessed Mr. Peter greatly today. The two airport-bound passengers stepped out of the taxi, not out of annoyance, but out of curiosity and joy at witnessing this scene. Instead of being upset about the delay, they were smiling. One of them clapped Mr. Peter on the back and said, Congrats, man, he said, understanding enough of what was going on. It was as if the entire taxi park had suddenly become part of a celebration. Mr. Peter looked around at the people watching, slightly embarrassed by the attention, but then he focused on Mr. Kennedy again. In an impulsive show of gratitude, Mr. Peter reached out and embraced Mr. Kennedy. It was a quick, heartfelt hug, one arm around him in a half hug since traditionally men might be a bit reserved. But in that moment, Mr. Peter forgot reservations. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, he said, voice choked with emotion. I don't even know what to say. God bless you. God bless you, sir. Mr. Kennedy patted his back and nodded, feeling his own eyes moist now. You are very welcome, and please call me Kennedy, he replied gently. It felt odd to be addressed so formally by someone older than him, who had done so much for him in character. When they released the embrace, Mr. Peter looked at the keys in his hand, almost unbelieving. This is like a dream, he murmured. Mr. Kennedy looked at him and said, That 1,000 naira saved me that day. By this time, the feeling around the taxi park was electric and positivity. Some drivers were even clapping or cheering. It's not every day that one of their own receives such a stroke of fortune. The two passengers who had been in Mr. Peter's taxi kindly said they would catch another ride to the airport, clearly not wanting to intrude on this big moment. They waved off Mr. Peter's apologies for the delay, saying no problem, with thumbs up as they joined another taxi, undoubtedly to share the story later of what they witnessed. Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Peter walked over to the new minivan together. Mr. Peter's hand ran over the smooth shiny hood of the vehicle, almost relevantly, He peered inside the windows at the spotless seat and marveled at the fact that it was his. He turned to Mr. Kennedy, still somewhat incredulous, and said, I have driven people in fancy cars and seen big men with wealth, but I never knew any would look my way like this. You have changed my life. My children, oh. He put a hand over his mouth as fresh tears threatened when he likely thought of what this meant for his kids' future. They will have a better life because of today, he said softly. Sir Kennedy felt a swell of happiness. This feeling of truly making a difference was worth more than any deal he had ever closed or any profit margin he had improved. You changed my life first, Mr. Peter, he replied. That day, you taught me what true wealth really is. I have money and assets, but honestly, I was poor in understanding until I met you. Mr. Peter looked at him, wiping his eyes with a cloth he had pulled from his pocket. Sir Kennedy, I'm just a taxi driver. What could I teach a big man like you? He said, genuinely humble. Mr. Kennedy smiled. You taught me humility. You showed me kindness and compassion without expecting anything in return. That's a greater lesson than anything I've learned in boardrooms. It reminded me of the values I had been taught as a child but perhaps forgotten in the rush of life. The two men shook hands firmly. A handshake now of mutual respect, gratitude and even friendship. Other drivers came up to congratulate Mr. Peter, patting his back and admiring the new van. Some teased that they would need a ride in his limousine soon. Laughter and joy were all around. It was a beautiful moment. In that handshake between Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Peter, two words met, one of financial wealth and one of heartfelt kindness. The busy Abuja taxi park had become the backdrop to a remarkable story, a story that those present would surely retell many times as a testament to the unexpected twist of life and the power of good deeds, a symbolic handshake, sealing an exchange far greater than money. It was an exchange of humanity and understanding. Eventually, Mr. Kennedy bid farewell to Mr. Peter after ensuring the driver had his contact information and vice versa. He encouraged Mr. Peter to reach out if he ever needed anything or even just to keep in touch about how he was doing. Mr. Peter promised he would and repeatedly expressed that he would include Mr. Kennedy in his prayers. They parted with smiles, each feeling a deep sense of commitment. As Mr. Kennedy left the taxi park and walked towards his own hired car, he reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. Just a couple of weeks ago, he had come to Abuja thinking only of business deals and schedules. A mishap with a car battery and an encounter with a humble taxi driver had completely altered his perspective. Though he missed his meeting that day, the lesson he carried was far greater. He realized that wealth is not measured by the balance of one's bank account or the properties one owns. True wealth is measured by the virtues one holds, humility, compassion, kindness, and the respect with which one treats others. Mr. Peter, a man of very modest means, was richer in spirit than many wealthy young individuals Mr. Kennedy had met. And now Mr. Kennedy aspired to be rich in that way too. In the following days, Mr. Kennedy found himself changed in a small but significant way. He became more patient with people around him, whether it was his staff, drivers, or anyone providing him service. When stuck in traffic, he remembered Mr. Peter's calm demeanor and chose not to let frustration overtake him. When he encountered someone having a hard day, he recalled how a gentle word from Mr. Peter or a simple gesture could make a difference, and he offered help or kindness without second thought. His friends and colleagues noticed the change. There was a new warmth in him, a willingness to listen and empathize more than before. One evening, back in his home city, Mr. Kennedy sat with his family and told his teenage children the entire story of Mr. Peter and the taxi driver. He wanted them to learn what he had learned early on. The children were amazed and moved. His youngest even said, I want to be like Mr. Peter when I grow up, kind and helpful. Mr. Kennedy smiled, realizing that the ripple effect of one act of kindness was already spreading to the next generation in his own household. As for Mr. Peter, his life indeed took a turn for the better. With the new minivan, he was able to earn more by transporting groups or airport travelers comfortably. He spent less on repairs. He became somewhat of a local legend among the taxi driver community, the man whose good deed was repaid in an unbelievable way. People who heard the story would sometimes request him specifically for rides, just to meet the man with such a golden heart. He remained the same humble person through it all, often saying that all credit belonged to God and that he was just glad he could help someone that day. The 5 million naira check Mr. Kennedy gave him was used wisely. Mr. Peter moved his family from a tiny rented apartment to two-bedroom flats in a safer neighborhood. He set up savings accounts for his son and daughter to secure their education all the way through university, something he used to worry he might not afford just on his taxi earnings, and he still had enough left to invest in maintaining his new vehicle and even aiding a relative in need. Mr. Peter's wife was initially in disbelief at the sudden blessing, but when he told her how it came to be, she wasn't surprised at the cause. She knew her husband's compassionate nature and was proud of him. In a quiet moment, Mr. Peter would sometimes look at the old photo of his kids, which he now hung in the new van, of course, and marvel at how that little token of love for his children indirectly led to such a dramatic change. It was because Mr. Kennedy saw that photo that he paused and calmed down. And it was because Mr. Peter carried love in his heart that he could respond to anger with kindness. It reinforced Mr. Peter's own belief in doing good. He would often tell passengers or friends, just be good to people, no matter what. You never know who you are helping or who is watching. God works in ways we can't always see. This simple incident in Abuja became a cherished story. A story Mr. Kennedy told in his circles and Mr. Peter told in his. It was a narrative of transformation, proving that humanity and goodness can shine in the most everyday scenarios like a taxi ride. In the end, Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Peter stayed in touch. Whenever Mr. Kennedy visited Abuja, he would sometimes call Mr. Peter for a ride, not because he needed a taxi, but because he enjoyed chatting with him and hearing updates about his family. They developed a genuine friendship built on mutual respect. Mr. Kennedy even met Mr. Peter's children and told them, "Your father is a hero to me." The kids, a bit shy, were happy because they could continue schooling without fear of being sent home for fees. And they adored their father even more after hearing how kind he was to a stranger. True wealth, Mr. Kennedy realized each time he thought of this, was not measured by money, cars, or properties. It was measured by humility, compassion, and how one treated others. He had learned this unforgettable lesson from a man who, by society standard, had very little. Mr. Peter might not have had a lot of money, but he was rich in the qualities that mattered the most. And by sharing that richness of spirit, he had taught a wealthy man what it really means to be a good human being. A man with very little had indeed taught a man with so much the greatest lesson of life. The story of Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Peter is a shining example that kindness never goes unrewarded, and that sometimes life has a beautiful way of bringing people together to learn from each other. It's a story that reminds us to stay humble and compassionate, no matter our status, and to recognize that in treating others with dignity and kindness, we discover the true measure of our own wealth as human beings. True wealth is not money or status. It is the kindness and respect we show to others. Mr. Kennedy's rush and rude words did not make him powerful. Mr. Peter's patience and generosity did. When we pause to see people as human, parents, workers, dreamers, we become humble, we learn, and we grow. Small acts of compassion can change a life, including our own. Treat everyone with dignity, because you never know whose quiet goodness will teach you your greatest lesson. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Peter on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with your journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V. And do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.